all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I have a few interesting articles to talk about today, starting with the Cybertruck landing in New Zealand for final winter testing. So apparently Tesla normally tests things out in Alaska, which makes sense because it's relatively close to California and Texas. But of course, when it's summertime and outside it's rather warm, they have a tendency to need to go to the opposite side of the world. So obviously they can test in New Zealand. My understanding is that the cover picture here is the Cybertruck testing in Alaska, not in New Zealand, but I can't guarantee that, so I don't know about that. But anyway, Fred Lambert wrote this, and I believe it's just like a couple of days ago, but I thought this was a really interesting thing to start with. The Cybertruck, of course, has been under fire from a lot of people because they say that it's not a real, it's never going to ship, and this is another nail in the coffin of that Tesla Q theory, because of course final winter testing would be something that would be done very, very shortly prior to the actual production. So little birdies are telling me August, September timeframe, we will see if there is an announcement of a release event or a delivery event that happens sometime in that time frame. So people can get excited. I'm not getting too excited for me personally just yet because I think I'm 600,000-ish on the list. So it's going to be a little while before I get one of these, but that's also fine because we just got the Model 3, so we have a car for a period of time. But anyway, you can see down here, if we go down here, this is the actual photo from New Zealand. The vehicle was being pulled off of the aircraft, obviously, as it was being shipped. And even though it's under covers, that is pretty unmistakably the Cybertruck. Not only the shape and everything, but also just the wheel well, the kind of squared off wheel well and everything. So it's pretty obvious that that's what's going on. And of course, I will leave a link to all of these articles in the description so you can look at this in more detail. But anyway, it's really, really good news to see that the Cybertruck is doing winter testing because, of course, they need to check on the batteries, on the lubricants, on everything just to make sure that the cold doesn't kill it. They probably also either have been or will be doing testing in extreme heat. I believe they do that in like Abu Dhabi or something like that in the United Arab Emirates. They go to very, very hot places to test that all out. So anyway, if they're doing this kind of testing, it means that they've got production candidates that are being pumped out, and they want to make sure that those vehicles will behave as expected under many different varying weather conditions. So all to the good. Very, very fantastic news. This is really interesting here. This is another electric article, by the way. Fred Lambert. Hey to Fred. Anyway, this is a rare and interesting look at Supercharger monitoring system. And something that I actually didn't know is that if you used to own a Tesla, obviously before I did, they used to sometimes at Superchargers show you the status of all the Superchargers in the country, which is really, really cool. But anyway, right now what you can see is, number one, is just how many freaking Superchargers there are in the country, in the United States and Canada and Mexico as well. And we are right down here in Belize. I don't believe there are any in Belize at this point. We actually just talked to Simon this morning. By the way, thank you, Simon. It was wonderful to have lunch with you at El Fogon, and we had a blast. So anyway, greetings from Belize, greetings to Simon as well. But anyway, if you look at this video, and again, like I said, I will post a link to this underneath, you can see like the status and how they're actually doing back end work to show how the Superchargers are up and running, what sort of status they're at. And this gives an insight into just how much data Tesla actually has as they work on the back end of their Superchargers, and obviously they do for their cars as well. But it shows, number one, why the Superchargers have a tendency to be up, like I think it's 99.5% of the time, or maybe it's 99.9% of the time. I may have actually said that in this article. I'm trying. It's a very, very, very high number. But anyway, the Superchargers, not only how they're up, but also how they are being scheduled, so that if you see a bunch of vehicles approaching the same Supercharger and know that they're going to be wanting to do Supercharging soon in the near future, that means that that you can redirect some of the vehicles away to other places. So anyway, it's very, very cool. And yeah, so only 2 out of the nearly 2,000 stations in North America are offline in this video, and with 24 stations having temporary outages or closures. So that is amazingly high percentages here. And that actually goes to the next thing. I'm going to just briefly mention this, which is that Rivian is prioritizing R1S production, which is their the SUV version, not the truck version, with robust demand into 2024. So that is actually really good news for Rivian. But that, of course, brings us to the big news, which just came out, which is Rivian is the latest one to climb aboard the NACS hype train, or North American Charging Standard, or Tesla's charger, and will offer Tesla Supercharger access to drivers. So this is hot off the press today, and I think this is fantastic news. And we'll just read a little of this article. Again, this is Scooter who did this one. American EV automaker Rivian Automotive announced it is embracing the North American Charging Standard, or NACS, originally developed and implemented by rival Tesla. Rivian is the latest automaker to embrace the charging standard, joining an ever-growing list of OEMs. It's been a popular couple of weeks for the search term NACS, as the Tesla plug has skyrocketed from a proprietary component to the true North American standard almost overnight. Talk it into existence, as they say, as Tesla renamed its charging connector the North American Charging Standard when it began opening its supercharger network to non-Tesla EVs. But long after any other automaker joined the fold. That's a weird translation of that. I'm not exactly sure what that means. But anyway, actually what they did was they called it the NACS, and I did a video on this when it happened last year, and this was prior to anybody signing on this. But what they basically did was they said, we're not going to claim royalties on any of this. This is a standard. Everybody can have access to it, and we will help you make it operate. It's unclear if they don't make any money off the back end, off the APIs. Clearly, they will make money off of their superchargers, because if people pull in there at whatever the variety of vehicle, they will be able to make money off of that. But as far as the standard is concerned, someone else at this point can develop the standard themselves, and that both the plug, the receptacle, and the plug itself, and they can build it out themselves if they want to, but they may not have access to some of Tesla's APIs and things like that. So anyway, this is this is really, really good news. Rivian is not a large company in terms of the number of EVs it manufactures, but if you look at legacy auto like GM and Ford, which are the big two that have signed on so far, they actually don't produce that many EVs either. So this is the kind of situation where even though people are like, oh, Rivian is a smaller company, it doesn't matter, because they are kind of a premier type of company. They're an aspirational brand that people really want to get because they think they're fantastic, but also people don't get it because they're worried about the charging experience. And Sandy Monroe and his lovely wife talked about how that was a very big problem for them, that they have a Rivian and they love it, but they won't take it on a road trip because of the charging issues that are coming up, that are incumbent on that. So anyway, Rivian joining board with this is fantastic news. Who's next? Some people are saying it's going to be Hyundai Kia that's going to be next. Other people say it might be Volkswagen next / Electrify America, since they're so connected to each other. And yes, the chargers themselves are starting to change over to NACS as well. But anyway, all of this is to the good, and hopefully we will just see others come along during the summer and join the NACS, because the sooner that CCS goes away, the better. It's a terrible standard. It should never have been put in place, and fingers crossed it will die very, very quickly. And then the last thing I wanted to touch on here is really interesting. This is in German, but of course I will do the translation. I'll leave a link to both of these in the description. Anyway, this is from Business Insider Deutschland version, and it says secret exit. I think that means like secret merger or something. Again, it's a translation from the German. Is Tesla buying this startup from Freiburg? So the electric car giant Tesla is said to be interested in buying a Wiferion, I don't know exactly how you pronounce it since it's a German company, from Freiburg. This emerges from a record in the commercial register. It says, quote, the shareholders intend to sell their shares in the company to Tesla International BV by means of a purchase agreement, end quote. When asked by the Gründerzähne, two of the investors in the startup confirmed that an exit had taken place without naming a name. So I guess the Tesla aspect of it is somewhat take this with a grain of salt. This isn't absolutely for sure yet. Also, Tesla has a tendency not to tell people that they've purchased other companies, so we may not ever know officially that this happened. But anyway, according to one of the investors, it's a, quote, interesting buyer. So far, neither Tesla nor Wiferion have responded to editorial inquiries. And then there's a little bit of information about Wiferion, and then it says conceivable use in Tesla factories for robots. Tesla has been working on a wireless charging system for its electric cars for several years and would buy valuable know-how in the field of inducting technology with Wiferion. Tesla could also use inductive charging for the autonomous robots that the automaker uses in its factories. Yes. This is making a claim that they're already using them. I think that that's probably true, but of course Tesla has not announced that they're using their Optimus robots yet in the factories. But anyway, so just understand that. It could also be used in the humanoid Tesla robot Optimus, which Elon Musk presented to the public a few months ago, and which is to be used first in factories and then in households. So it's interesting to see how this might work for both Tesla vehicles. And if you go back, I believe it was Investor Day where they actually showed, or maybe it was Shareholder Day, I don't remember which one it was, but in one of them they showed a picture of the vehicle, a Tesla parked in someone's just garage, a consumer's garage, and they clearly showed like some sort of charging pad underneath the vehicle itself. So that would be one optional use for inductive charging, would be a home sort of charger, or even on the street or something, right? You could have a public parking place that a Tesla or other EV comes into, and they park on top of that, and you could either pay a meter or have an app or something like that, so that as you parked in that public parking place without having to plug your car in, it would just start to charge. Also, it could be done in your garage. Also, it could be done in apartment complexes or other places where people don't have garages to store their vehicles. So this would be a very convenient way to do it without actually having to have a plug and plug in the car and all of that. Scott, going ballistic, says that he does not really believe that it makes sense for Tesla bots, for Optimus, to use inductive charging. I'm not quite as hardcore about that. I could see it being possible, but it does add a lot of weight and complexity to an item like a robot. It's not so bad for something like a phone, because of course you can touch the phone to the pad and you can do inductive charging very carefully, but anybody who's done wireless charging for their phone knows that you have to adjust it, and it has to sit just right on top of the inductive charging pad for it to charge properly. So a little complicated with something like a robot where it can shift around and move, and it's only got two tiny little feet. It doesn't have a lot of contact surface area to actually stand on as it's working. So it would be something that maybe Tesla could use in the future with robots. Maybe it would be more useful when the robot was a home type of robot as opposed to working in a factory where it could just plug itself in. But then again, the robot has hands, so why not just plug itself in at home as well? So in my mind, I'm not quite as hardcore about it as Scott is. Scott is like, no way they're going to use it for Optimus. I'm like, yeah, maybe they could someday. But it seems like the more useful outcome, assuming that this is actually true, is that you would be able to use this in a home situation or a public parking situation where you would just drive the car up, and maybe it would have a little guide or something, and it would be like pull 3 inches forward, beep, 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 and it would do something like that, and then tell you when you were directly over the inductive wireless charging thing, and then it would charge for you automatically. And that would be a big help. Again, for people who have garages and stuff, not as big of a deal, but if you're parking in public, if you're parking in a parking garage, if you're parking in an apartment complex, any of the situations where you don't have easy access to a garage where you can store the charging cable and the charging solution, this would be a really, really big help for people. So it could be a very, very valuable solution. Again, we don't know that this is absolutely the case because, of course, neither party, neither Tesla nor Wiferion is actually saying whether or not Tesla has purchased them, but it does look to be that this very well might be happening, and Tesla does like to buy. They bought Maxwell Technologies for some of their dry cell technology stuff years ago. So, this could be something that we might not see the outcome of for several years, but it will probably show up in 3 or 4 years or something. We'll probably see something, maybe sooner than that. You never know, because this is actually something that they have deployed out in the real world at this point. So they do have technology that's not just in the research stage, but is already deployed out in the real world. So it could happen sooner, but the likelihood is it could be a few years from now, and it could be rolled into a product that Tesla wants to use that's not directly a wireless charging solution, but something else. Or they could just take this whole hog and they could just roll it out and in public as well. And in addition to superchargers, they could get into the public charging space business or sell it to consumers directly, that they could just drive over it in their garage and park automatically. I know my wife would love that because she always, like remembering to plug the plug into the vehicle is always like, but if you had a pad, you just drive it up there at night and it just charges overnight. You never even have to think about it. So anyway, all good news, really fantastic news that the Cybertruck is doing winter testing. That means that we really hopefully should see in a couple of months the Cybertruck get delivered to consumers. And that's an amazing thing. It's amazing to get that inside glimpse at how the Tesla supercharging network is working. Amazing to see that Rivian is using the NACS, or is going to use the NACS standard. That is really fantastic. I really was hoping that they would agree to this relatively quickly. We'll see if Lucid decides to do it, but certainly Hyundai Kia should be someone that might do this very soon, and then Volkswagen is just going to have to do that, and Stellantis is going to do what Stellantis does. But they've already said that they're researching the possibility, so more than likely they will follow suit relatively quickly as well. And then finally, really interesting to see that Tesla is still looking at other charging solutions, and that there are other possibilities for them as well using this Wiferion technology, assuming that this is a true story. Again, it is just a rumor at this point. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do like it so other people can find it. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to all of the people who support me in any way, from Twitter subscriptions to Patreon subscriptions to YouTube channel members to just watching and liking the videos. Thank you all so much. I really do appreciate it. Check out the links to the merch store, to Amazon, to Tesla, all of that good stuff. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.